I'm Melanie Pichet.
I'm Brendan Powell.
And we're the Brawl team at Sage Real Estate. We are here today for the inaugural edition of WTF, This Week in Toronto Real Estate. We are joined today by Mortgage Jake. Huge news today. Big mortgage changes were announced this morning that are going to impact a lot of people in Toronto. So we wanted to get a better understanding of what's happening, what it means, and what you can do about it. So Brendan, why don't you talk to us about what changes were announced today?
Well, there were two. So the finance minister announced today that there were two main changes. We're going to focus on one of them, but the one we're not going to focus on was they were talking about tightening some of the. There's a capital gains exemption for your first-time residents, for your primary residence. And there were a lot of foreign buyers that were exploiting loopholes of that. So they're going to be tightening that up. That's not what we're going to talk about. What we're going to talk about is how the government has decided to tighten some of the qualifying rules for mortgages that are under 20%. So maybe you can start talking about what it is that they've done and
so anybody with 20% or more down will not be affected by this rule. But if you have less than 20% down, you now have to qualify at the 4.64 posted rate. What that essentially means is you can afford less property, you can afford a smaller mortgage compared to what you could have afforded today. These rules will come in October 17th. After October 17th, we'll be under the new rules. Prior to that, we'll have a 2-week period to still apply under the old rules.
So what if I already have like a pre-approval in place?
Pre-approvals are not going to be valid after October 17th. We will need to have a firm purchase agreement, a conditional purchase agreement, but it's going to have to be in writing between a buyer and a seller.
So a conditional one would also be?
Absolutely. Conditional is fine, just the pre-approval will not apply because people who get pre-approved tend not to purchase within 4 or 6 months.
So they call this a stress test. So I think how it works when somebody applies for a mortgage, bank tells you how much you can afford based on your income, and they're changing the interest rate that they're using to qualify that, but it doesn't mean you're paying a different interest rate, right?
Absolutely not. You are right now, for example, paying 2.39 on a 5-year fixed.
Right.
Today you can qualify at that rate. So for your next 5 years, your rate is that rate, and that's what you qualify for. What the Bank of Canada now wants to make sure is, over the next 5 years, you can afford, if rates go up in 5 years, to 4.64. So they're stress testing all of these applications. And it's causing about $100,000 to $130,000 drop in how much these buyers will be able to afford.
And that's significant because I actually ran some of the numbers. And if you were qualifying for a $700,000 mortgage before, under the new rules, you're qualifying for like
$570,000, $580,000, yeah.
So, and if you qualify for $930,000, you're now qualifying for $775,000. So in Toronto, I mean, those kinds of changes make the difference between buying a house and not buying a house. I mean, that's not insignificant.
Let's make it really clear exactly who is affected. So we're saying people who are not affected. If you already have 20% down, you're not affected in any way. Which means anybody buying over $1 million, not affected because you already have to have 20% down. So who is affected? If you have less than 20% down, but your income is strong enough that it doesn't matter if the interest rates were the posted rate, which is what now? 4.64. So if, theoretically speaking, rates were 4.64, and you still have less than 20% down, and you would be able to buy if it were at that rate, then that's
absolutely
fine. Then you're still going to get a cheaper, more than likely, a cheaper rate.
A much cheaper, yeah. Listen, just to make this clear, we still have this rule for people who want a variable rate mortgage or 1 through 4 year mortgage.
Right.
So we've had this rule already, and we haven't seen much of an impact in the market. Right. Now everybody, no matter if you go variable or fixed, will be impacted with less than 20% down, to your point, under $1 million. What's going to happen, in my opinion, is more people will now need to go to bank of mom and dad to get some more money to get the 20%, or have mom and dad or parents or siblings get on the mortgage with them to get them over that hump to qualify for that more, bigger mortgage.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few things people can do. I think we're going to see a huge rush on buyers buying between now and October 17th. So if I was a seller with a property to sell, I'd get that sucker on the market tomorrow.
Yep.
And take advantage of the fact that I think bidding wars will be crazy despite it being the long weekend coming up. I think we're going to see that rush.
As long as the property is under $1 million.
Under $1 million.
Because if it's over $1 million, it's not going to matter because the buyer isn't going to be the kind of person that's affected.
Yeah, and I think we're also going to see people moving between markets, right? I think we're going to see people moving outside of the central core where it is already ridiculously expensive to buy. We're going to see areas like Etobicoke, Mimico, things happening there where buyers are moving out. We're going to see people buying smaller. I also think this is great news for the condo market because it's already been a spectacular couple of months for townhouses and condos, and we're going to have a lot of people. Because let's face it, if you were qualifying for 900, now you're qualifying for 7, it's really hard to find a house for $700,000.
Definitely, yeah.
Like that's going to be a big,
Yeah.
that's going to change things.
Downtown Toronto, yeah.
It's going to change things.
And there's always a silver lining to these mortgage rules changes. They could have gone harder. They could have said everybody has to have 10 down, everyone has to have 20 down. They could have done more severe changes. I like that the government is at least taking a bit of a gradual approach and giving us a 2-week period rather than laying down the hammer and saying, okay, full stop.
Well, I think we had talked a lot about just a couple weeks ago about expecting changes to the minimum down payment required.
Yep.
And there's been a lot of talk about whether or not that's going to change to 10% or not. So I guess today probably would have been the natural way for them to announce it, and they
Doesn't
didn't.
look like-
So maybe that's good news.
Yeah, definitely.
Right,
good
so
news.
you can still buy, if you've got 5% down and you're a first time home buyer, you can still go and buy a house. It's not necessarily going to affect you. The only kind of person that is going to be affected is if you have that less than 20% down and your income that's supporting it is only good enough to afford something if the rates are at the super low, the actual rates are getting
239.
239, let's say, but your income isn't strong enough if that same house you bought at 5% was actually at 4.5% interest.
Absolutely.
That's that slice in between there. That's who's getting affected. That's only a small part of the market, but if you are in that market, what can you do?
You got to get pre-approved right away under the new and old regime.
Okay.
But more specifically, if you do not buy a house by October 17th, the new regime takes effect. The 4.64 rule is what you're going to be qualified for. So get out there, start looking, start making offers.
Okay.
And if you buy something today, you can still get it at 239 and qualify at that rate.
All right.
So.
And
And if you don't,
And if you don't, then simply, okay, well, what's my second option? How much will I qualify? 5464,
Right.
and start looking for that property.
right.
And I mean, the big question is, the government's doing this because of concerns over overheating, particularly in Toronto and Vancouver. Those of us who are in this market every day are not comfortable with 20% increases in a year. I don't think any of us enjoy kind of the pace of the increases. The big question is, do we think this is going to actually slow down the market? Or is it going to be like we've seen in previous changes, where there's an even bigger panic, parents give even more money, and prices continue to go up? That's what we've seen with the last few changes.
Listen, in my 14 years of doing this, I've seen 8 major rule changes, and all of them were prescribed as this is going to be a big impact, and all of them led to simply nothing. The train has continued. I agree with you. We can't continue to see 20% increases. We should make houses affordable, but this is still a top 3 city in the world according to The Economist, according to Price Waterhouse. It will be an expensive city. And to your points, if you can get out of your area that you're looking and compromise, that's what buyers are going to have to do now.
And they're doing this because they see that slice of the market, that type of buyer that is more leveraged and hasn't quite got enough income, is in that little slice of for what they're buying as being the highest risk.
Absolutely.
So they're just trying to back off of the highest risk sort of tranche of the market to bring down risk.
And what we want is in 5 years, when it's renewal time for all these 5-year fixed mortgages, we want them to be able to afford their renewal.
Yeah.
We don't want to rush to the exit. And if that's what this will impact, then great, that's a good thing.
That's not a bad thing in the long run. Okay.
So if you've got questions about the changes happening right now, or want to find out how it impacts you a little bit more in detail, feel free to reach out to Mortgage Jake on Twitter.
On Twitter,
That's
at
how we know
Mortgage
Mortgage Jake.
At Mortgage Jake.
At Mortgage Jake, or